A lady come into the library researching about a man that was in a wreck in 1954. She was doing research for some people up in North Carolina that had lost a son, and she thought this might be him. And so I found the stuff on microfilm for her, and when I saw his picture and it turned out not to be who she was looking for, I couldn't sleep. I was wondering, who is this man? You know, this is a young man that his family's missing him. They don't know anything about him. He's an unknown. And so I started researching.
So his road ended in Hopkins County in
Yes.
1950?
1954.
And we were not able to identify him?
No, he was hitchhiking from Dallas. A man picked him up and didn't ask his name, just was giving him a ride. And he said, "I can take you to Paris." And he told him how to go. He said, "I'm getting sleepy. Can you drive?" And he said, the hitchhiker said he would drive. And it was like midnight, and he took the wrong road and ended up coming to Sulphur Springs and out on 19. And he went to sleep. And they went off into the creek bottom.
So
And he was killed.
the hitchhiker driver was killed?
Yes.
And the truck driver?
The man driving, it was a car, and
Okay.
the man that was driving, he was injured and was taken to a hospital, was in a coma for about 3 days. But he survived it.
Well, so this roadside accident, and so the authorities came, and then the remains were finally buried in Hopkins County.
Right. They finally got the newspaper to take pictures of him, trying to identify him. He was with Day and Day Funeral Home, and there was like 2,500 people that came through there trying to identify him, and they couldn't identify him. And 10 days later, they buried him as an unknown at the city cemetery.
With a stone that said?
With a stone that said, "Known only to God," and the date that he died.
So we're going to fast forward many, many years.
10 years went by, and his brother worked at a service station, ran a service station in Gilmer, Texas, and a man pulled in and he told him, he noticed he had an out-of-state license plate, and he was talking to him, and he's like, "Going to visit a brother we hadn't seen in a long time. We'd lost contact." He said, "I lost my brother 10 years ago. We've never heard from him since. He used to live in Dallas, and no one knows where he's at now." And the man said, "You know, come to think of it, I remember reading in the Dallas paper and in Sulphur Springs paper, there was a man that was killed here in a car accident about 10 years ago." And he said, "You should contact Sulphur Springs." So he called Sulphur Springs police, and they sent him to Judge DeWitt Lloyd. And when he went to Judge DeWitt Lloyd's office with his sister, they showed him a picture of him. And he said, "That's my brother. That's John Everett Finney."
My goodness.
And he asked him, when did he die? And he said, August the 10th, 1954, 10 years ago. And Kenneth said, "Oh my." He said, "That was on my 18th birthday."
Well, what happened next in this story?
Well, since then, I thought I've got to find out more about him, but I had a friend of mine that's a member, and she's one of 9 First Families here in Hopkins County. She lives in the Woodlands, Carol Ann Smith, and she said, "I can help you with it." I was telling her about the story, and she goes, "I'll be glad to help you with it." So it kind of sucked her into the thing, and I got excellent help from her writing the story and editing it, and we started working on it, and we found his family. I've been in contact with all of them. There was 8 children. His father died when he was 17 with TB. That left 8 children at home with their mother from 2 years old to 17. And he decided to go to the service. And while he was gone, his mother died with TB. So at the time, they were living in Cass County. And the sheriff took those children in, and he let the 16-year-old girl go live with whoever she wanted to. And the 3 next boys were sent to Buckner Orphanage Home, and the 3 little ones were adopted out. The sheriff adopted them all out, found them a home. Wonderful families. They had great lives with them. But when John found out in the Army that they were in Buckner's orphanage, he allotted his military pay to go to Buckner's orphanage to help raise his brothers. And where he was going when he had this car wreck was to see his 2 little sisters up in Texarkana.
Amazing and touching story.
It is.
Well, so the culmination of all your work and research, I mean, the pieces have just fit together like
Well,
our design.
there was some roadblocks. I filed all these papers through the state to get it. I went and bought his death certificate, and everything said unknown. So I filed with the state to get it changed, and they said you can't do that, even though you have the information. It has to be a court order. So then I had to get a court order to change the death certificate and have it amended. And so Judge Robert Newsom, and I took it to BJ Tears first, Judge Tears, and he said, let me take you over to Judge Newsom. And Judge Newsom got me through the court system. I was able to get an amendment. I had to file that with the state to prove he was dead. And then I had to file through the state to try to get Social Security number. I wanted to find his military. Mm-hmm. The Buckner Orphanage papers, thanks to his namesake nephew, signed a release for me to get those records, and it showed that he was in the Army and had allotted his pay. So that was, evidence that he was in the Army. I filed with the National Records for Military, National Archives. Got his military records finally after 6 months of filing papers back and forth. They thought his records were lost in the fire that they had with all these military records, but they found them. There was just a few burnt spots on them. Mm-hmm. And then by that I was able to order him a military headstone.
Well, will this be placed? What will happen next?
This Saturday at 10 o'clock at the city cemetery, we're having a celebration of life for John Everett Finney. It's going to be a military ceremony. They'll do a three ball volley. Mm-hmm. They'll do taps, and then they will fold the flag and present it to his sister and brother, because he has just 2 siblings left. And then we're going to reveal the headstone. It's already been placed. And TAP Funeral Home has been gracious to help us get this all set up.
Marvelous story.
And then we're going to leave from the cemetery. We'll go to the square, and the Sons of the American Revolutionary Soldiers will be there to perform. And also Clayton McGraw is going to do a speak of the wall and let the family know how the wall started and all about it. And then we're going to reveal that we've had John Finney's name added to the wall.
As if he were adopted by Hopkins County.
Yes.
Yeah. Very touching.
Thank you.
In hearing you tell about all the different ways and means that you went to get the documents you needed to rename this person or identify this person and then honor him, were you kind of put through your paces? Have you done all these types of searches before?
Not to this extent. I was in touch with places in Austin and Washington, Highway Patrol, police, sheriff. There's 3 pages of sources that I have, went through, and I crossed everything I could cross, But there was one thing that got me started on it, when I thought, how do you find out about a man that's been killed in a wreck, And Ronnie Glossop used to be our president at the genealogy library, and I asked him when he came in one day, I said, Judge, how do you find something on a man that was killed in an accident here and you don't know anything about him? Well, if anybody knows Ronnie Glossop, he cuts up a lot. And he said, go look in the inquest book. And I thought, that's right. We have those books on our shelf. So I went and got the inquest book for that year, and I come back and I was so excited, and I grabbed the book to open it, and he was reading something, doing research, and I looked at him and I said, what am I supposed to look under, use? And I flipped the book open. He said, that's a start. And I flipped the book open under use, and it said unknown man, and it told all about his accident. I had chills all over me.
My.
So I was like, okay, this is your sign. You've got to start, and you can't finish till you get through. But he's got a wonderful family. I've got to meet one in person, and I talk to all of them all the time, and they're on my Facebook. And
This has touched so many lives.
yes,
Amazing work by you, and amazing work by our Genealogical Society library.
yes, a lot. We got to do 2 stories and put it in our heritage book, our genealogy quarterly that we do, and it's for members, and we'd love to get members, you know. So there's wonderful stories like this in it all the time. And then, you know, we're always looking for volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you really need a good way to find out something, we're the place to do it.
And the Genealogical Society is located inside the public library.
Yes,
on North
ma'am, at
Davis Street.
611 North Davis Street.
And so this Saturday will be a happy day for you.
Yes, it'll be happy and sad and exciting, you know.
And you'll be able to close this volume of your life, which has been over a year and a half long, and you're contributing something back to our community. But you said something in all this story that you've told. You mentioned first families.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to ask you if you could come back, and we'll make that another story
Sure.
here for Channel 18. Who were the first families of Hopkins County? If you'll come back, Rhonda, we'll find that out.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.